Everybody, welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Tyler Snyder won't be with us today, but Cody, how you feeling on this lovely, actually really good weather April day?
Yeah, the weather's fantastic. I want a nap. You mentioned Tyler is not with us because our boy's married. You won't see him again until we're back in May because he is taking time off for his wedding, which is great. He's deserved it, but we just came off his bachelor party weekend. The three of us were together. Sorry there was no content, but there was a ton of fun, and we're all covering and resting. But George and I still had to bring a great show for you today.
Yes, we will. If you have not heard us the last two episodes, just a reminder, we are doing a every other Wednesday format with some bonus episodes through the off season. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you are on to make sure you get notified when we jump on. We are going to talk more NFL, not as much fantasy talk, and make sure you guys join the discussion. You can follow us on social media and join our Discord chat. I think that wraps it up. Cody, why don't we just sit back, relax, and chat? Okay, so doing some news. It seems a little bit interesting when we talk about some of these stories that happened almost 2 weeks ago, but I have to throw out a little well wish to tight end Foster Moreau, who was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma at his physical with the Saints when he was intending to sign with them. So obviously never great news, but it's fantastic that they caught it in early stages, and I'm wishing him a full recovery.
Sure, just want to echo that statements from myself, George, Tyler, all of us, the Couch GMs. And just another important reminder to, if you're not a football player, you're not as, locked into all these health screenings to make sure you're taking care of yourself, connecting with your doctors to make if anything seems off. But also just need to give a shout out again to the NFL's medical staff for doing these, types of physicals, make sure they're trying to check anything. Yes, on the grand scheme, it's for to get the most competitive edge on a football field, but they are saving lives. We're seeing it with Foster Moreau, especially coming off the season we just had.
And it is actually the same doctor who caught long snapper John Dornboss's heart condition when he was traded to the Saints a few years ago. So, I mean, bad luck probably in the sense that he had to give two players bad news like that, but good luck in the fact that he caught both things. And it is good not only for physical performance on the football field, like you said, but making sure these guys are healthy.
For sure. And we're talking about uh, healthcare professional in the sports world that was brought to light by what we thought was a tragic accident. Not that it wasn't, but it wasn't as tragic as it looked like it was on the field with Damar Hamlin. And he came out during the last 2 weeks and said, "Hey, I think I'm ready to play again. I want to play again." To be clear, he has not been cleared to play, but he has expectations of playing again. He seems to be trending in the right direction. And let me just tell you, that first announcement, Damar Hamlin being introduced in Buffalo, is going to be electric. It's going to be a clip that's going to circle around the internet, and I think everybody's been pulling for Damar Hamlin, and I definitely hope to see him back out on the football field this fall if that is what he chooses to do.
Man, after all the scary scenes with that whole situation, the fact that he's alive today, let alone thinking about playing again, is amazing to the health staff and all the health care that we have in place. But I want to see him be a kick returner on the opening kickoff in the first game he's back and see if he can run one back like the Bills did right after the situation happened. That would be the ultimate, feel good story to wrap it all up.
Maybe just like a pick game sealer would be actually because he's a safety. Like that
More
might
fitting.
be
I know he's not a kick returner, but I just think it would be funny because that's how they like let it off, with after everything.
yeah. But so those are your so good and your feel good news stories for this week. But we're going to transition now into a little bit more of actual football. And the New York Football Jets have made a trade. It is all been waiting for, and it is them finally dealing Elijah Moore after he called out the offensive coordinator who is no longer there. There seemed to be some discontent, not getting enough playing time. He was traded to the Browns for essentially a pick swap. So the Browns gave up a third, um, or gave up a third and got more, and the Jets received a second. So the Jets now have the 42nd and the 43rd pick in this year's drafts, while the Browns got a third round pick and Elijah Moore. Pretty fair trade for, a guy that had high expectations. He hasn't had the best start. He's shown some moments, but he has not been anywhere near consistent or lived up to the expectations of the second round pick that he was just 2 seasons ago. Um, some may say that's just because of too much expectation. Some may say that's on him. Could just be the poor quarterback play. There's a lot of things to go into it. So definitely excited for the change of scenery. What are your thoughts on this Browns trading for Elijah Moore?
I think a second round pick for Moore was a little bit of a steep price, but not, that steep of a price. And then we consider it wasn't really even a second round pick. It was a pick swap that moved them down 30 spots or whatever, or moved them up 30 spots, whatever it was. Yeah, move the Browns down 30 spots, and then they got more. Absolutely a steal, in my opinion. Because, yeah, like Elijah Moore hasn't lived up to expectations consistently. The cries of him not getting the playing time they deserved were semi justified. I think he was still on the field a lot. He wasn't the focal point of the offense once they got Garrett Wilson in house, and they had quarterback issues as well. He should get more consistent quarterback play this year, having Deshaun Watson throwing him the ball, even if Deshaun Watson isn't quite his MVP caliber self. Um, but he's still going to be a number two. I'm hoping he can actually slide into a complementary role, and he doesn't have to be one of those target monsters to really be someone who is relevant. But it's a very low risk trade when the Browns considered they needed another wide receiver, and they didn't have to pay that much for somebody who has a round one star ceiling.
All right, let's calm down. I mean, he was taken in the second round. Like, let's not give him full on credit of being like he has
Well,
potential, but
he has potential, but like, yeah, he was taken in the second round, and after his rookie year, if they hadn't gone and drafted Garrett Wilson, how confident would you have been that he blew up last year?
not confident.
He had a great second half in his rookie year.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have like they that's to your point though. He had a great second half, and they're still like, you know what? We have three first round picks. We got to spend the first one on a wide receiver.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
we got to spend a top 10 pick on. Well, actually, there Garrett was in the top 10. The first one was Sauce Gardner, so I'm corrected. The second one on a wide receiver, but still two top 12 picks. Um,
Two offensive and defensive player, the rookie of the year. It's like, yeah,
yeah, I think the problem with Elijah Moore too, and this could just be me, is he was like the third guy out of Ole Miss. So like people are
hmm
expecting AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, and that's no fault of his. But that's why I was hinting at with like the too much expectations that might have been put on him because they're like, oh, this is the next guy in line of, is Ole Miss becoming wide receiver you? Like he has potential, but he definitely has some inconsistencies. And I don't even think it's a lock that he is the number two Cleveland. Like I think
are
they
you that
still
high
really
on Donovan Peoples Jones?
I think they like Donovan Peoples Jones. Um I can't remember the guy's first name, but Bell they took last year, I believe, in the second
David
round.
Bell? Yeah,
You know, Amari Cooper is still there. Like, I don't think this rules them out of taking another wide receiver if they like, Quentin Johnson or Zay Flowers or something like that. I think he's a great piece. It's a fun piece and definitely worth the value of the trade to only essentially move back 30 spots and get a young player on a cheap deal that had high expectations. And sometimes you just need a new change of scenery.
I agree. And I mean, I expect him to slot into the wide receiver two role. I could see them taking another wide receiver, whatever you just said. But um, I mean, I don't think they would have went out and made this move if they didn't expect him to have some kind of a role in the offense that they're basically going to cook in day one, because he is a talented enough or shiny enough young receiver that he was expecting to be involved wherever he went. And the reason that the Jets didn't need him is they already had Garrett Wilson. I believe Corey Davis is still on that roster. They signed Alan Lazard, and then they went out and signed Mecole Hardman right before the trade happened. There's such a busy wide receiver room. Him and Braxton Berrios, I believe, were both unhappy in that situation, and they both now got out and have a chance to show that they are some of the young up and coming wide receivers.
Yeah, and the Jets are still in on OBJ. Corey Davis is either a part of the Aaron Rodgers deal or he'll be cut. That's a $2.5 million cap savings right there. Um, since he hasn't been, it kind of lends you to think that he might be a part of the Aaron Rodgers deal, a guy that the Packers tried to trade for last year. They tried to get Corey Davis. He has some connections with Matt LaFleur. So that one's another name to be on the move, especially with them and the Odell. I agree. I think the Elijah Moore signing or trade made sense, especially after they signed Mecole Hardman. Um, you know, our roots are in fantasy football, and Mecole Hardman, I am not any more excited about, even with potentially Aaron Rodgers, as I would have been for Elijah Moore. Like they don't move the needle for me, even with Elijah Moore now in Cleveland. Like he's still at best a late round flyer, in my opinion.
Agreed. But I'm glad they still brought in somebody across from Garrett Wilson. And I know you're going to be the Alan Lazard backer, but like he's been solid when he was given the opportunity. He was better last year than a lot of people gave him credit for, but he's like not a wide receiver one. He's a borderline wide receiver two. He's a good blocking piece. He's a good piece for an offense in the locker room. But he's not essentially a guy that defenses would have to look at and pay attention to because of some certain skill he's got. Like, yeah, he can be a sure-handed receiver, but like Mecole Hardman, somebody who can stretch a field or take a jet sweep to the house. Like, he's somebody a defense is going to have to zone in on more than like an Alan Lazard, and that's going to take pressure off of Garrett Wilson.
I mean, I did agree, and you said I'll be the Alan Lazard backer, but
Yep.
like you said, because like you have to zone in on him if he, if he runs to the left on a fake jet sweep or a jet sweep. But like it's not like, Bill Belichick would be like the Jets this weekend. Let me figure out how to take away Mecole Hardman. Like they'll be like, yeah, watch this guy. If he runs this way, you gotta make sure you set the edge. Like
Mhm.
uh where Alan Lazard too, and especially I think the Aaron Rodgers piece is a big part of it, is like if you think back to the Peyton Manning Denver days when he went to Denver, he lit it up through 5 touchdowns, became an MVP and won a Super Bowl. Like that team had a lot of great pieces, but the wide receivers were Demarius Thomas, rest in peace, and Emmanuel Sanders. And if you watch
Mhm.
those games, Demarius Thomas was the go-to guy, the big play guy, the deep threat guy, whatever it may be. But if it was 3rd and 6, that ball was going to Emmanuel Sanders 11 out of 10 times. Like, and I think that's what Alan Lazard can be for Aaron Rodgers because they have the connection. I think he'll have, probably 800 yards, touchdowns, and Garrett Wilson will still be the guy, but like they didn't just pay Alan Lazard $11 million a year to not be a big part of this offense as well. He has Nathaniel Hackett there too. Like I think Alan Lazard is still getting better. Um, and he's another reason why the McCole Hardman trade is, or not trade, but the signing is interesting. But like, unless they sign OBJ and keep Corey Davis and make this wide receiver room completely a mess, like I think if Rodgers is there, like or Alan Lazard is a solid. Garrett Wilson's still the number one, but Alan Lazard is a solid option.
I think we have to talk about the Rodgers deal too, because I mean, this was over 2 weeks ago now that he went on Pat McAfee, said he intends to play for the Jets. We still hear so many things coming out about the Jets are not worried about getting the deal done. There's no timeline. It's not a rush, but there's been like no news of progress or anything on this deal. I'm sure there's a lot of chess going on in the background between the Jets saying he doesn't want to play there anyway. Why would you give your first round pick? The Packers saying he's worth the first round pick. Just give it to us. I'm sure there's a lot of that going on, but is there anything that you've heard on the inside of the Packers, Cody?
No, and I always say this when it comes to trades or contract extensions. Andrew Brandt, former uh, financial guy for the Packers. He writes for, I believe, Sports Illustrated now. He's an NFL insider. He's always quoted saying deadline spur action, and this trade has no true deadline. We can make up ones. It could be April 17th when the Jets can report to offseason activities. It could be April 27th, day one of the NFL draft. It could be April 28th, day of the NFL draft. It could be June 1st, where the Packers can spread out the cap hit if he's traded after. The only true deadline is right before week one when the roster bonus would kick in. essentially make Aaron Rodgers untradeable for the Packers because of the dead cap hit would skyrocket from already extremely high 40 million to 99 million. So this could honestly go on until after cutdown day, like in training camp. I don't expect it to. Um,
No.
but there is, if the Jets aren't willing to, and we don't have to get into the whole debate on who has leverage and whatnot. Everybody wants this to happen. Like we're at the point where both sides want it, they just need to figure out what is the compensation. Now the Jets may be lowballing, which is why there's been some rumblings that maybe the 49ers might get in the mix, the Patriots might get in the mix. I don't blame them. If the Jets are like, best offer you got's a third round pick. Oh, wait a second. I can get Aaron Rodgers for a second round pick. Like that might make teams interested. I still, at the end of the day, no matter what the rumors are, I think he's going to end up in with the Jets. I think the Packers and the Jets. Um, Even Joe Douglas said it at the trade or at the owners meeting. He was asked about Lamar Jackson, and he was like, "That wouldn't be in good faith at this point to go after and pursue Lamar Jackson." Like it seems like these teams like kind of know that this is where it's headed. They're just working out the kinks, working out the details, because like we've never seen a trade of this magnitude. You could say, what about Russell Wilson last year? Well, Russell Wilson was guaranteed to play in more than 1 year, barring a very rare injury. Aaron Rodgers himself has admitted, hey, I was 90% retired. Like that has to cause some, trepidation from the Jets front office. And I think the Packers have every right to be like, look, you're getting a Hall of Fame quarterback. You're opening a Super Bowl window. You're going all in this year. Let's also talk about what he's going to do for you off the field. You have people on your season ticket holder list. Your season tickets sell out. Oh, he's going to be the number one jersey selling in the like. He is going to do so much for the Jets organization outside of what he brings to the football field. So there's a lot to balance. Um, all that to say, no update. After the Elijah Moore trade, they're like, oh, the Jets picked up a second. Maybe the perfect middle ground is they get to keep pick 13 and the Jets get 42 and 43 and the Packers get 2 second-round picks instead of a first. Sounds great to me. I don't think if your expectations is 2 first-round picks, you're crazy. If your expectations as a Jets fan is you're getting them for a conditional 5th-round pick and a 2nd-round pick next year, like that's out too. Like there's going to be a
Mhm.
middle ground. We're going to get there. My guess is leading up to the draft, week of the draft. Um, Heck, honestly, it could even be draft night. And the Jets are on the
During the
clock.
draft. Yeah.
Like, if the Jets really want an offensive lineman, but the guy they want goes to the Tennessee Titans at pick 11, call Green Bay and be like, all right, you can have pick 13 now. Like, our guy's gone. Or if our guy's
Yeah.
there, they might be like, oh, we'll give you 42 and 43. Like, that's why, like, it might not happen till night one during the day leading up to day two, once we kind of see how the first round falls. Definitely interesting. We'll keep you updated. That's a lot of non Aaron Rodgers news, but that is your hashtag Aaron Rodgers watch.
Yeah, I think we can leave it there. Cody did a great job of wrapping all that up, and I don't really have too much to add until something actually happens. I just know I'm on the train of I still definitely think it's going to happen. We're just going to have to see when. Another interesting quarterback story, and you talked about Lamar Jackson a little bit in that. Um, where do we begin with what has happened with him in the past 2 weeks? I guess we'll start with a man named Ken Francis. So Ken Francis is allegedly a business partner of Lamar Jackson. He's apparently working with him on his off-season training routine. Lamar had said that he was gonna them two were gonna work together to post like some kind of video series on his Twitter showing all his off-season workouts and stuff like that. Um, a day or two later, the NFL put out a statement to NFL teams saying that someone named Ken Francis is going to be reaching out to teams about contract negotiations for Lamar Jackson, and he is not a authorized NFL agent, and he is not allowed to contract negotiate for any NFL players. Lamar then denied that he's been negotiating for him, as Lamar is representing himself. Um, Other than that, I mean, there hasn't been a ton of news. There was the rumor that the Jets were going to go after him, and then obviously they denied that. The Ravens had announced that Lamar has requested a trade, but they are still negotiating with him, and they still believe that he is going to come back. The trade partners have not seemed to have been plenty. I wrap everything up there, Cody?
Well, you forgot that Meek Mill told Robert Kraft that he should go get Lamar Jackson. That happened over the last 2 weeks. It was
Then
just to be
Asante Samuel came back and said, Lamar, you don't want to play for Belichick. That also happened.
and now Belichick is potentially shopping Mac Jones, so who knows what's going on there. To be clear, it was Lamar Jackson that initially broke news that he was requested a trade back on 2nd, I believe, was the date he said in his tweet, which happened to tweet 30 seconds before, uh, what is it? John Harbaugh
Harbaugh.
sat.
Yep, John
Always get
Harbaugh.
Jim and John confused.
Oh, yeah.
John sat down at the owners' meeting, getting ready to do his interview. And I don't even know what the tweet you're talking about. Ian Rappaport did on Pat McAfee yesterday. Like the teams are still talking, which is odd because Lamar put out a like thank you to the Baltimore Ravens fan tweet thread. But if you're still talking, then you haven't closed the door. Um, this felt to me, and I didn't actually say someone I followed on Twitter, but someone said this feels very much like the Debo Samuel fiasco from last year.
That's a good
Like
description. Yeah.
like we went like 2.5 weeks to like, oh, Debo Samuel is done in San Francisco. He doesn't want to play running back. He doesn't want to do this. And then guess what? They upped the guaranteed money and he signed back there. So still think Lamar ends up too. It doesn't make sense to me why more teams are not in on Lamar Jackson, while
Mhm.
why the Colts are like not considering Lamar Jackson instead of the third best quarterback in this draft. Why the Falcons were
Yep.
all in on Deshaun Watson and we're like, oh no, we can't get uh, Lamar Jackson when we saw what Deshaun Watson went for. Like,
Yeah.
I can understand Carolina at this point made their move to number one. That takes them out. Houston, they like the guy at number two. That makes sense. But the Raiders even
Those are
they
the
did.
only two quarterback needy teams I think that makes sense for not going after him is the Texans and the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I would like Tennessee. Like I know they have
Uh
Ryan
huh.
Tannehill, but give me a read option offense with Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry.
Even if it's only for 2 years, yes, I'm in.
Like let's have some fun. Like that's like
Uh huh.
cheating. That's like running the triple option in NCAA 14. Like no one can stop. Like that would be a ton of fun. Like every team could use Lamar Jackson, and like he'll bring some stuff that to your team outside of the football. For being an MVP and nobody wants him, there's a lot of question marks there. But we'll have to wait and see how it all if he gets dealt during the draft, at the draft. Um, I
If he
believe
resigns, I still don't think that's off the table.
no, I don't either.
But But I did. I'll say. I'll wrap it up with. I saw a tweet that going even a step further than what we were saying about the teams that should be interested. It was like a list of teams that should be interested in Lamar Jackson, and it was basically. I think they had the Panthers and the Texans on that list. I could understand taking them off because they're high in the draft. They like their top two quarterbacks in this draft, and it eliminated like the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Bengals. There was like 25 teams on the list, and I get it. Like Tyler would disagree with both everything that we're saying if he was here, but Lamar is a a former MVP, one of the more talented quarterbacks in the league. His passing stats are actually better than people give him credit for. Put him in a different offense, there might be some growing pains, but he's going to be better than most teams' current quarterbacks.
And honestly, like which wide receiver did he have that could truly separate?
um, I,
Uh,
I
I mean,
Marquise
Hollywood
Brown, he
they
was the
they
one.
and they moved him for a first round pick
Yeah,
and can do much. I mean, he struggled to stay healthy and he had some drop issues. He was a big play threat. Like I do
but
think
he
it's very
was very successful when he was in that Lamar offense as the one guy. And that shows you like he was still good with Arizona, but like he still struggled to stay healthy, but he wasn't like the Marquise Brown we saw at his peak in Baltimore either.
for sure. And like it does also make it interesting to you that the reports that the Ravens offered a contract to Odell Beckham. Just mentioned like name the last wide receiver option. But
Yep.
one, why are you offering is offering Odell Beckham a contract like that's tied to Lamar? Like,
It's
is
got
that
to
like
be.
hey, we're gonna get you a receiver. Like, we're gonna sign Odell Beckham. Now, Odell Beckham's not gonna sign until he knows Lamar's the quarterback. Like, he's not gonna go
Yep.
play there with Trace McSorley if he's still or Tyler Huntley. I get well, he
It's
might.
just Tyler Huntley. I think Trace McSorley's still in Arizona.
Yeah, I think he's out in Arizona now. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so like there, there's definitely some going off, which I think this again. I'm gonna reminds me a lot of Debo Samuel. I think he ends up
Mhm.
as a Raven, but crazier things have happened in the NFL.
Yes, they have, and Nelson Aguilar is not enough to move the needle to make Lamar want to come back and be like, I want to work with Nelson Aguilar. OBJ might be that guy. I could keep us moving. The NFL meetings did happen, like Cody mentioned in our last bit there, and there were some rule changes that were accepted. A couple of loophole things. I'll name some of the top ones we can discuss a bit. Players are now allowed to wear number 0. That's a fun little group there, and I'm not surprised either with how many numbers have been retired by some NFL teams. Opens up the options just slightly more. Um, an attempt to eliminate launching by changing a rule to define a launch as leaving one or both feet. It's just for a player safety thing. I think also tied with the helmet to helmet rule when they first initially brought that into the league. They made tripping a personal foul now. And what I think a lot of us we're looking for to try to simplify preseason cutdowns. There is now one single preseason cutdown date after week 4. I guess it is still week 4, isn't it, of the preseason? Might be week 3. I don't know if we're counting
Yeah, cut
Hall of
down will
Fame
be
game or not.
after like the Tuesday after the week 3 preseason game, and then teams will have
Yeah,
there'll be an off week, and then this will be that Thursday night following will be opening kickoff.
yeah. So nothing really super crazy there. A couple of player safety things. I'm not as big into the like, oh my gosh, people can wear 0 now as some others could. I know Calvin Ridley took number 0 from the Jags when he got reinstated. But I think that's the only player as of now that's confirmed to be wearing 0.
I feel like one of the Giants players was the first guy that just signed. Um, but I think that got overlooked because Darren Waller decided to wear 12. So,
Oh gosh.
so
I
like that,
missed that one. That's gonna be freaking weird.
yeah, Darren Waller will be 12 this year. Yeah, 0 is a cool number. It'll look great when in from Georgia gets to continue to wear 0. He's a potential first round, definitely a second round tight end that wore 0 in college. So that'd be one cool if he could keep his number. The single preseason cutdown date just means like hundreds of guys are going to lose their job all on the same day. But I think it makes
That sounds depressing when you put it that way.
it's the truth though. Like
Yeah.
almost 50% of the NFL will lose their job on that day. It's unfortunate, but it's a part of the business. I think it makes sense though. Like some people have been like, well, now they don't have a chance to like practice for a week with another training camp and get picked up. But like, I think those situations were so far and in between that to get the full evaluation with the guys that you were in, get to be able to play that last preseason game, I think it'd be big, and we might even see an uptick in undrafted free agents making teams around the NFL. Because of this, some rules that they have decided to save until a later date was having the 49th active player just be strictly third active quarterback on game day. The 49th active player, also known as the 49ers rule. The 4th and 20 that they've been practicing or trying out in the XFL that replaces the onside kick. Um, they have a meeting in May. They might look at this one. They might look at some different ways to change the onside kick. And then the one that seemed to get like had a lot of momentum, but then got a hard pass was the ability to flex Thursday night football games, um, which is good. Didn't be able to be forced into playing uh, Thursday night football games, but I do believe they did allow teams to play 2 Thursday night football games this year, and that doesn't.
Yes.
You might be like, well, the Cowboys played 2 Thursday night football games last year, but they played back to back, so they had a week off. So teams and wouldn't
And
or
Thanksgiving doesn't count. That's different.
well, it will like it would have in years past. Like they were allowed to play again the Thursday night after because they got a full week. Uh,
Got you.
but so now you can now have 2 short week Thursday night football games for
Yeah, that's
teams.
rough.
Um,
I mean,
I
you
don't
also can look at the flip side as they have 2 mini buys too.
Right, like, there's pros and cons, like, it's probably something to do, and you could see some bigger teams playing Thursday night, or maybe this, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, like, they hadn't played on Sunday Night Football in heck in forever, and so, like, they
Mhm.
might not get 2 Thursday night primetime games or something like those lines, trying to get some better teams in the Thursday night window, because at the end of the day, it's all about that new Amazon money.
It is. I know the biggest argument against the flexing Thursday night games was fans that were actually going to the game in person. That is rough. A lot of people, like a lot of fans, actually prefer to go to Sunday 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock games, and don't even like Sunday night football, Monday night football, because you know how hard it is with a work day the next day. Thursday is no different. I guess it's a Friday. Like people might be more willing to take off on a Friday for a football game, but like, um, yeah, what was I gonna say?
What
Um,
to that point, you
Changing it, like if you buy a ticket for a Sunday afternoon and it gets flexed to Sunday night, that's normally not as big of a deal as if you get buy a ticket for a Sunday afternoon and it gets flexed to a Thursday. Big difference.
especially if you're traveling from state or something, like, I mean,
Yeah.
me and my wife are planning to go to Las Vegas for the Vegas Packers game. Like, we'll probably fly out on Thursday or Friday, and imagine we already have everything booked to fly all the way out to Vegas Friday morning, and 10 days before our trip, they're like, "Actually, this game's on a Thursday." So, like, outside
Right.
of just, like, player safety, like, that is a big reason too, but and then so glad that one is on hold for now, but that's pretty much all the news, the notes, the let's chat about, over the last 2 weeks. So, why don't we go back to our roots a little bit and do a way too early fantasy football mock draft?
All right. So this isn't going to be one of our traditional mock drafts where we go through the full, if it's even 12 rounds, we each have one team. There's a lot of computer simulated in the middle. We're going to do our best because it's so early to basically predict the first 2 rounds of fantasy drafts this year. So we're going to be both talking about every single pick. If we do have a situation where we're torn and is not a consensus pick, we will alternate who gets the final say on that pick. We're going to do a snake draft, half PPR, 10 teams. Um, Make sure you find us on our social media. We'll post the final results on there so you can follow along if you are interested while you are listening. Anything I missed, or should we start debating pick number one, Cody?
Uh, we can start debating, and if we forgot something, I'm sure we'll fill it in. Pick number one. I mean, that has to be the debate. Like, people are probably talking about their fantasy leagues now, figure out maybe they already have their draft order. Maybe maybe they do it based on how they finished last year. So they know they get number one pick. They're going to spend the next couple weeks or months, unfortunately, to determine what it's going to be. And in my opinion, there is only two options for the pick. And it's, do you want to
You
go
want to say
running
them at the
back
same? Do
or
you
do
want to
you
say
want
them
to
at the
go
same
wide
time?
receiver?
Oh, okay.
And me, I would still take the running back. I know that's traditional fantasy football. I know the wide receivers are big. But with I know there's quarterback concerns in San Francisco on if Brock Purdy will be ready. But to me, Christian McCaffrey is still the clear number one fantasy pick this upcoming season.
I'm not even gonna fight you because I still think my number one is Christian McCaffrey. So I'll pencil in McCaffrey as our first pick, and we can move right on to number two. And if I had to guess, your wide receiver at number two is Justin Jefferson. Is that correct? Yes, that's not shocking. And I don't hate going other than running back at pick two because I think McCaffrey is like the consensus number one, and there's a lot of question marks with some of the other guys there. Well, Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs repeat. Is Austin Eckler going to still be a Charger? We don't know that for a fact. He requested a trade. Um, so I like the idea of thinking Justin Jefferson, and I just want to bring it up how early we start thinking Travis Kelsey? Traditionally, it's been pick 8, 9, 10. Is it 2, 3, 4 this year?
I don't think so. I still don't. I would
Okay.
still I would still take Justin Jefferson here. I would still, as long as Eckler is still on the Chargers, I would still take him. Um, I would take Jamar Chase over him. I think that's when you can get in the conversation if you're talking, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelsey. Like those would be the next tier. So I guess if we talk about tiers a lot in fantasy football. So I have my tier one, Justin
Mhm.
Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, right? Then I have my next tier, which would be Jamar Chase, Austin Eckler. And then I would have my next tier, which would be Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, probably throw in Travis Kelsey, maybe a Tyreek Hill, Saquon Barkley. Like that's when I think it's a lot more. You could see him go as early as pick, 5 all the way down to pick 10.
Okay. I'll agree with you with going with Justin Jefferson at 2. So we'll lock that one in. Now we're on pick 3. Um I personally would go back to running back. I mentioned people like Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor's a good person to throw in there. So I I'm going to go under the assumption that Austin Eckler is going to work out a situation where he stays as a Charger, and he's been too much of a touchdown machine the last 2 years for me to think that he is going to regress enough to make me regret taking him at pick 3. He didn't make me regret him taking a pick 3 this year. So I'm going to say my pick for 3 is Eckler, and do you have something enough to fight me for one of the other running backs?
No, I'm Eckler's the only other. I'm taking wide receivers next if it was me. I would take Eckler too, and I think because we're doing this we're recording on April 4th, podcast released on April 5th. Austin is a Charger, and that's how we should view it.
Okay. So we got Eckler going on there, and you say that you want to go wide receiver with the next pick. So I'm assuming that's Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I would go Jamar Chase here. And he's just slightly above a tier for me than the rest of the guys. We're getting to the point that like wide receiver is so deep. Like Tyreek Hill is still there. Yes, I know the
Mhm.
whole Tua is a question mark, but he is produced. Like I still produce just fine with Mike White. Like he's a baller. Like Stephon Diggs. He had a little bit of a down year. How early are you trying to go after him? Jonathan Taylor, the lock from last year, had some injury concerns. Like how quick are we going back there? Cooper Kupp. Like he's an elite wide receiver. Matt Stafford's still there. They're both coming back from injuries, so it's definitely concerning. But for me, it would be Jamar Chase, number 4, and then I think the real debate starts.
I'm going to fight you a little bit on Jamar Chase anyway, and you'll probably end up winning with this because you had the final say on this pick. But my argument for not taking Chase here is because, like you said, wide receivers are super deep. You have a chance of coming back around to you in round 2. At this point, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, CD Lamb, or AJ Brown. One of those 4, more than likely, is going to fall down to you in round 2. And I get it. Maybe they're not as much of a lock as Jamar Chase. But on the flip side, in running backs, you have Travis Etienne, who was very up and down, Tony Pollard, who I really you know, like that, but he's his first year alone. I'm trying to think who else would probably be around that spot. Um, no one's standing out as much as wide receiver. You have so much more depth at that part of the draft. And this is why we always end up going so running back heavy at the top of drafts. And a lot of times it comes back to bite us. So maybe going more wide receiver is the way to go. But there's a reason why we've been doing this traditionally. And I still think there's a place for it to an extent.
Right. So I hear what you're saying. I really do. Um, and you know me, I love the wide receivers. I would
Mhm.
much rather have, and I think we saw that too last year. Like I would much rather have 2 top end wide receivers and kind of almost not stream running backs. Like I still want a solid guy, but how many running backs stayed consistent all year long? I mean,
Fair.
I'm looking if I'm ESPN, they put out a mock draft. Now this is PPR, so it's a little bit different. We're doing half point PPR, but it's not that big of a swing. Like they have Derrick Henry down at 13. That's kind of crazy to me, but like
My
that's
God.
kind of how like people are viewing him. Because he's behind Saquon Barkley, he's behind Jonathan Taylor. Like he's right above Josh Jacobs. Like there's a lot of guys, but there's also a lot of guys in the 4th and 5th round that are intriguing to me. Like, you know, Breece Hall coming back. I think that's a very intriguing option. Alvin Kamara, there's a big question mark around him, but like I'm okay rolling the dice with a Breece Hall and a Damian Pierce or a Khalil Herbert, like down in round 4 and round 5. If I can,
Fair.
if I can get me, Jamar Chase and you know, let's see, what's that, round pick 16, like an AJ Brown, or maybe I'll come back around and get Chubb because that dude always falls. Like,
That's true too. For no reason, like the dude was still a top 5 running back last year.
yeah, and on the ESPN article I just looked up was pick 17, which would be
My
exactly
God.
where I would pair him with Jamar Chase. So I'm going to play the
Yeah.
odds because I'm going to get the top wide. I'm going to get the
Okay.
second best wide receiver in my opinion.
I don't hate it. Like I said, there's plenty of arguments to be made going Chase instead of running back, but I wanted to just bring up the debate a little bit. Before now, let's go ahead and play a little game of put together your next tier of running backs, and we'll try to like figure out how to sort them together. So I guess Barkley and Taylor are in that group. If I'm not, do you disagree there?
Yeah, I would put Barkley, Taylor there.
Jacobs.
Man, so much like a pan. Like I was so low on him. I'm still not I'm not sold on Jacobs. Uh I would probably say Barkley and Taylor are my two,
Okay.
with Jacobs and Henry like right on the doorstep. Like there's not a gap between a true gap between them, but
Mm-hmm.
I would still say, I'd probably say Barkley, then Jacobs, or I'm sorry, Barkley,
Barkley then
Taylor,
Taylor.
then Henry and Jacobs are interchangeable at that point.
Okay. I'm okay with doing Barkley then Taylor because I was gonna say between those two, I like Barkley better. Um, Same offense, as opposed to Taylor. You're gonna have a new quarterback in there for sure. He was already up and down last year because they didn't have the actual consistency on offense they would have wished, but he was still effective to the case that it shows he's still a top end running back. You just got to hope that the situation around him gets better, and I think he's going to be fine. But I'll say Barkley as our pick 5 because he should be the safer bet between the two, and then we'll go Jonathan Taylor at pick
Hang on.
6. Pick 7.
With pick 6 though, this answers your question. The injury concern with Taylor or Travis
Mm-hmm.
Kelce. This is where I think he
That's a
gets
great
into the
point.
conversation.
So you're saying it goes Barkley pretty much because he's above Taylor, and then you get to debate Taylor's injury history versus Travis Kelce's complete destruction of the
Because
tight end position.
I think if we're being like right here, we're talking Jonathan Taylor injury history, Josh Jacobs potential 1 year flash in the pan. Then we're talking Derrick Henry coming off a pretty rough year with a team that is truly rebuilding, and he could be on the move. Cooper Kupp, elite wide receiver that's coming off of an injury, has questions at quarterback. Tyreek Hill has questions at quarterback. Like the only sure thing is Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football right now. And do you want his
And
number
he's
one
going to
pass
throw
on?
the ball to Travis Kelce.
Right. Now, I get it. Travis Kelce is, 32 going on 33. Like, eventually age is going to catch up. I'm not playing this game with him like I did with Tom Brady. If it happens to be this year and I took him in the first round, oh, well, I have Travis Kelce. Like, it's just, at the end of the day, like, a bad Travis Kelce is still probably tight end 5 at worst in today's
At
times.
worst, yeah, a bad Travis Kelce could probably still be tight end 2.
Right.
And like he'd happen to get beat by like a Darren Waller or George Kittle or something like that.
So if you want to go Taylor here, just because you like taking the running backs and you don't think the positional value, which I think is also an important part when we talk about tight ends, we just mentioned. Like, is Mark Andrews tight end 2? Is that what we're talking about? Like,
If Lamar's there,
if Lamar's, and if he's not, like, who's tight end 2? Like, you just
Kittle,
get Kittle, but like
Kittle question mark
with no Brock Purdy, like
then you're like Darren Waller,
with
but
Daniel
we don't like
Jones.
Daniel Jones either. Like this is the exact situation. Evan Ingram, like I don't even like that much, but here we are.
I think I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of thinking we probably should take him at 5, but now I think we need to get Kelce off the board at 6.
I'm good with going Kelsey at 6, and that'll knock Jonathan Taylor down to 7 because I think even though we were just kind of ripping him down there, like he's still worth pick 7. And if you take him over Kelsey, I can see plenty of reasons too. But I brought up the fact that like people will start thinking about Travis Kelsey as high as pick 2 this year for a reason.
Right.
And it's exactly because he dominates the tight end position. And that's how many points you're getting basically as a bonus every single week, except for the 2 weeks a year he decides to put up 5.
Yeah. And like we just mentioned too, with Travis Kelsey, there is so like we mentioned, like you brought this up with Justin Jefferson. Like how much better in terms of fantasy is Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase?
Not super much. There's a little bit of a boost, not much.
Now they're more premium positions. You need more receivers than you only have to start one tight end in most leagues. So there
Yep.
is like you need to get more. But Travis Kelsey, what was it? 60 points more than wide receiver two last year?
I'm
Like so,
pretty sure it was 110 by the end. No, maybe it did get cut down a little bit because Evan Ingram had a crazy week, but it was closer to 100, I'm pretty sure.
yeah. So like there
There
is
was a point, at least with a couple weeks left, that he was 100 or 110 points ahead of second place, and second place at that point was Mark Andrews.
and if you take Travis Kelsey, you do not have to worry about you don't need up. Like you just pick one up on his bye week. You don't need a backup. Taylor at 7, I like here, and then pick 8. Like the two other running backs we mentioned is Henry and Josh Jacobs would probably be the next two off the board. Then you have to throw in Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs would probably be the next two. I still love Devontae Adams. He balled out with bad Derek Carr.
You're
But
not throwing Cooper Kupp in there either?
I thought I said him. I'm not gonna lie. I
No,
really
you did
did.
not. No, you did not.
Yeah, so I'm right here. Okay, I would be between Cooper Kupp and whichever Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs you like better. Do you want a running back? Do you want a wide receiver? I would probably go running back at this point. Um, just because I just mentioned Devontae Adams, I can probably get him coming back around in a team league. I can
Yeah,
probably
like what's the difference between Henry slash Jacobs and I'll even exclude Chubb because I feel like in our situation he would probably go earlier than some of these ridiculous people. So Jacobs slash Henry and Pollard or ETN or something like that, as opposed to getting Cup. Sorry, and so as opposed to getting either Jacobs or Henry and then being able to get Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs. I think that's the second group there makes more sense for your roster fill.
But with all that said, Cooper Kupp still has the carrot of, if healthy, can fit wide receiver 1. Can
Yeah.
be the most dominant player. That's I don't think like, and this sounds crazy, and this is not anything on Derrick Henry. I know I've been like kind of the most anti Derrick. Three of us, if you've been a long time listener of the show, not that I think he's the bad. That team right now is looking pretty rough. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
we saw it last year. Like when they didn't have Ryan Tannehill, and hopefully he'll be back this year. They're expecting him to be back. As of now, if they don't surprise everybody and move up to 3 and jump the Colts for Anthony Richardson, like, can Derrick Henry still finish as RB1? Yeah, but it doesn't feel as
Yeah.
likely as a Cooper Kupp. Like
It
Debo,
doesn't even feel as likely as Josh Jacobs because Josh Jacobs just led the league in rushing yards.
right? Like Debo Samuel, great wide receiver. Yeah, he could finish as fantasy wide receiver 1. But would I bet on it? No. I still like Derek. For Cups. Question mark. I don't know who has the correct turn to pick, so I'm going to let you decide if you want to go Jacobs here and then Cup. But then I would suggest that we take the next one at pick 9.
I am on the bandwagon of going Jacobs and then Cup.
Okay.
And my argument would be because taking Cup down at 9 or 10 allows me to come back around to get a running back faster. At pick 8, I would rather take the Jacobs, who you could argue is the last of the obvious options to have a chance to make a run at RB1. There's definitely somebody who could break out and could, like you said, Derrick Henry has a chance, but I think like if you're looking at it, McCaffrey, Eckler, Barkley, Taylor, and Jacobs are your top 5 of best chance to get RB1.
All right. So we're doing Jacobs and
And then Cup.
So if you're team 10 here, you have to be ecstatic to be at the turn and get Tyreek Hill and Derrick Henry.
I would think so.
So I think that
That's the lock in my head too.
yeah. So
Who would you take in round one just to be like, I got this guy in round one. They
I'm
got
gonna
this guy in round
take
two.
I'm gonna take Tyreek Hill in round 1 just to smite Tyler since he's not here.
That one's for you, Tyler. So Tyreek Hill to round out round one. Derrick Henry start round two. Just before we go further into round two, so our round one, we have number 1 overall pick Christian McCaffrey, and then Justin Jefferson, Austin Eckler at 3, Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley at 5. Travis Kelce is the only tight end we're going to be drafting in this exercise at pick 6. Jonathan Taylor 7, then Josh Jacobs, Cooper Kupp, and Tyreek Hill to round out round 1. We did say lock in Derrick Henry as a solid turn of Hill and Henry. We can be the killer H's or something. So then you have a Cooper Kupp going into round 2. A lot of your top end running backs are gone. This is the argument of, do you double up on the wide receiver and then play for the high upside guys in rounds 3, 4, 5? Or is there somebody here that we like enough that you would still go running back at pick 12?
I would double up on wide receiver here. I still like Stephon Diggs or Devontae Adams at this point. There's still a ton of great running backs. Like we said, we don't have to go with the norm, and we could put Nick Chubb. Like that would be a great option. Uh, you know, Joe Mixon, he's still available. Had a good year last year. You mentioned Tony Pollard. Like, how high does he go now that Zeke's gone? Like, there's a lot of intriguing options. But for me, I would probably go, especially if I took Cooper Kupp. I would take Stephon Diggs because now I have 2 guys that could finish as but I have a security blanket if Matthew Stafford doesn't come back or Cooper Kupp doesn't come back, and then I'll take my flyers on running backs later. I'm kind of building in a security blanket while still getting the best player available.
Yes, and I'm glad that you said Diggs instead of Adams because I absolutely love Adams. He's most likely going to be one of my next 2 picks. But I think I like the idea of Diggs slightly better.
Cool. And it can't be your next pick because you're not going to double up on Jacobs and Adams unless you're the ultimate Raiders fan out there and you're like, Raiders to the Super Bowl, baby. I would think that excludes Adams out of this conversation because of Josh Jacobs being. So then you're looking at, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or do we go and double up on running back and go into the season with Jacobs and Chubb? Not the best for half point PPR. Like that is why they're a little bit knocked down. They're predominantly runners, but you have what running back 1 and 2 and how they finished in the AFC last year.
Yeah, and you're most likely going to end up with 2 top 10 running backs, which I mean, you could end up being a trader and try to that sounded very bad coming out that way, but try to trade one of them before the fantasy trade deadline, get yourself a top end wide receiver, especially if you can be like Nick Chubb doesn't have a ton of touchdowns, but he's still leading the league in rushing yards, which I think is very possible. Or even Jacobs is having a solid start to the year. You saw what he did last year. Like there's a lot of trade value, especially if you have a team that's, fighting for a playoff spot mid-season. That's like, I don't really have anyone at running back. I've been streaming, but I have the wide receiver talent. Try to target a team like Team 9 who has Cup and Diggs. Like that's something that could happen. So I think the best player in my mind right now that's not named Adams, because I would not go Jacobs and Adams, is Nick Chubb. Especially because I think the drop off from him to the remaining running backs is pretty steep. So that's why I think I would do that. I just don't know if I absolutely love the roster build of going Jacobs, Chubb. You have to be someone who's proactive on the trading, on the trade front, I think.
I mean, I don't think you have to be like, you might be able to swing around because you're only a 10-team league. You might be able to swing around and get like a guy like T. Higgins, who's still going to put up points, be a solid option for you. DeAndre Hopkins will still be available. Keenan Allen will probably still be available. Deebo Samuel, he's going currently in the 4th round in 10-team leagues. Like there's some options there. I would take Chubb. That I would be, especially because I wouldn't take Adam at this point. With the pairing up with Jacob. So I think Chubb makes sense. And this is kind of too like there's so many good wide receivers at this point. Like if you roll it into the season, like with, Jacobs, Chubb, and let's say you get in round 3 Keenan Allen, and in round 4 you get Christian Kirk. Like, that's a solid first 4 picks.
It's true. I think, and I mean, it's still early for me to be like completely finalizing my fantasy draft strategies. And if anyone out there is in a league against me, feel free to listen in. But I've been somebody who's always been the more traditional take 2 running backs in the first 3 picks, and that might still be the case for me. But I think like doing some reflection after this season, looking back the last few seasons, I've noticed way too many times where I had 2 top 10 or 2 top 12 running backs and my team was basically just stuck in the mud. Like wide receivers and Travis Kelce have been so valuable to teams that like
Welcome to
it's
the club.
really good having those 2 running
Yep.
backs. And
Come
I
to
still think it's important to have 2 good running backs in the first 4 rounds. I'll push it back around. But I am coming a lot more to the side of early wide receivers being much more important than we used to think.
So let's take
Yeah,
Taylor
it's
and Adams for team 7. Let's just we
so we're going
talked enough
Taylor and Adams.
we talked enough about
Yes.
Adams. He's the best wide receiver uh, left on the board. Um, this one is extremely interesting to me. Team 6, because you took Travis Kelce. Do you view
Mm-hmm.
him like a wide receiver, and you're really trying, like, really looking at like a Joe Mixon, maybe taking the flyer on a Tony Pollard? You know, Kenneth Walker would be another name that's up there. Um, a guy that's pretty low on the board, but I'm going to mention him with, Jordan Love. You expect him to get more carries, and Aaron Jones. He's a guy that, he only had 2 touchdowns last year, so he's going to be an incredible value for one of your 2 if you're a double wide receiver team. A guy that only had 2 touchdowns, had high expectations last year, is dropping to the 3rd, 4th round currently. Like, that's gonna be, and maybe you called me the homer, but I think that's gonna be an incredible value for there. So where are you at?
I I mean, you can argue if you're going double wide receiver in drafts like this, like you can just go full send 0 running back. But I almost think if you're taking Travis Kelce especially, like and if you're taking Travis Kelce and not going 0 running back strategy, I think you're trying too hard. Like I think you're going to end up reaching on a running back that you're going to regret. Because a lot of the guys that you said, like I think it's kind of unclear to see where to take Ken Walker at this point. I've seen him as high as pick 10. I've seen him down in round 3 and 4. I think pick 10's a little ridiculous, but you know how that is. And then there's guys like Aaron Jones down there, Joe Mixon, who we are valuing, I think, a lot higher than a lot of other experts are right now. We'll see how his value evens out as we get closer. Um, I think at this point, like if you're taking Kelce in the middle of the first round and you don't take a wide receiver in round 2, you're going to regret reaching for a running back who you're trying to make into a RB1, and he's not going to quite hit your expectation, and you're missing out on a wide receiver who could be a lock top 10.
I think that's a solid point. Now, don't if you take Kelce, don't wait to pick to match him up with Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd or 3rd round. Like, I know that would be an incredible stack, but you can't waste 2 prime draft picks on non-prime positions.
Yes.
Travis Kelce is a luxury. You can't stack him with Patrick Mahomes. As much as tempting that would be for me. So I'm with you. I would go wide receiver here. The question is which one wide receiver? Because the next 3 guys would be CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those would be my next
Yep.
3. I think we're in agreement there.
We are. Um, feel free to counteract my Dallas hatred or my bias to say that I think AJ Brown is my favorite of the 3, and then I would go Lamb and then St. Brown. Um, do you disagree with that?
Um, so no, yeah, I'm like flip a coin between Lamb and uh, AJ Brown, because we saw like a kind of emergence as the season progressed of Devonta Smith. Like, how much does that play into a factor? But then I'm like, heck, I love T. Higgins at the top of the third round, and we took Jamar Chase 4. Like, teams just have 2
Yeah.
good guys, so I think I would go AJ Brown here with pairing him up with Travis Kelce.
I'm good with doing that. We're gonna get the Super Bowl matchup as our first two picks there. Team five's got Saquon. I think it's totally cool for them to go right back with CD Lamb if you're
Agreed.
cool with that.
Write it in.
Okay. CD Lamb there to team five. Team four now is when we got to start thinking about running backs again. Do we go zero running back to a sense? I guess 3 rounds of no running backs is your running back, but double up wide receivers to go with Jamar Chase for team four? Or do we stick with the wide receivers and go Amon-Ra St. Brown? I do think there's a bit of a drop between AJ Brown, CD Lamb down to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not that it's a big one. But I don't know if there's enough for any other running backs to go in there. I think particularly out of the group that I'm seeing, it's either Mixon or Pollard are my next two favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's Nick's, but you're not going to take Mixon with Jamar Chase.
Exactly. So we're in the same situation as we were with Adams and Jacobs earlier.
Right. So I think Amra's ceiling is probably right here. Like you need the best out of him. Um it might be too rich for Tony Pollard. You know, could you throw in a guy like Garrett Wilson, assuming Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback? Like, does that move the needle enough for you? Because, when he had an elite talent in Devontae Adams, he was, borderline the top wide receiver in fantasy football. Or do you think because he has Alan Lazard as a security blanket, will that knock him down? Um, it's still mind blowing to me that like Ramondre Stevenson and Travis Etienne are current, and even Dalvin Cook, which Dalvin Cook is an interesting name. His shoulder is supposed to be healthy, but like Stevenson and Etienne are ahead of Cook and Aaron Jones. Like we haven't talked about Andre Swift yet. We haven't talked about the return to Javonte Williams. Like there's a lot of guys and a lot of mid-tier running backs. I think you're going to be able to find some value here. So I kind of want to go wide receiver here to pair him with Chase and maybe take Amon-Ra St. Brown in this instance because Jamar Chase, because of Higgins, will be a little bit more inconsistent. Like he'll always, he'll have some great games. He'll have some 3 touchdown games, but there'll be a day or two where, Jamar Chase only has 4 catches to Higgins 8 or something like that. It's just how the NFL works. Where I know Jameson Williams is going to be there, but Amon-Ra is like their go-to guy. He's a playmaker. That offense was looking good. I think I would take Amon-Ra in this case just because I'm starting to fall in love with the middle round running backs, and that's weird to say.
So this sounds like me last year where I was kind of like really liking that middle tier of running backs, even though I was still trying to hype up the early round running backs. But I'm cool with going Amon-Ra. So we'll go St. Brown here to team four. So they are now double wide receiver. Team three is now in a predicament where that next tier of wide receivers is gone, and their first pick was Austin Eckler. So now are they going to go double running back like team eight? Are they going to start ushering in the next group of wide receivers, which would probably include T. Higgins? I think is probably the top guy, but I think it's a little early for him, in my opinion. What are your thoughts here? Because this is a very interesting turning point in the draft.
I would go Joe Mixon, I think, and kind of hope that you can get. Well, you wouldn't take T. Higgins, maybe a Garrett Wilson or a DK Metcalf or in a couple picks. I think that's right. I would get 2 solid running backs, and then I might even take 4 wide receivers in a row. Like, just take shots is what I'm thinking.
I'm good with going Mixon. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good option. That's a good point now because the same way that I was talking about, I think I would like to take Jacobs here and then like taking Cup. Like we were talking about the end of round one, going into round two. You can start looking at who's coming around on you in the turn. Even though we aren't going that far in this mock draft, that's going to be something that we're going to be looking at a lot closer as we get in towards the season. We're going to be doing some more full mock drafts as the season gets closer. So don't worry about that. Even though we're doing a little bit more general football talk, the fantasy talk is still coming. I'll still be bugging you on your TikTok timeline about some fantasy tips as well. But okay. Team 2 took Justin Jefferson in round 1. We have 2 picks left in this draft. We threw out a lot of names. of guys that we think could be going right around this 2-3 turn. I don't even know if we mentioned Jalen Waddle and Najee Harris to go along with the Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne. Like I said, some people have Ken Walker extremely high. I don't even know really where to start here.
I think I'll help you out. There's a
Okay,
lot of
hit me with what
enticing
your next
names,
tier is here. Yeah.
but I do think there's still between Ken Walker and Tony Pollard. They are the last of the guys that you feel confident will be the starter into the season. I know Ramondre Stevenson's there, and they lost Damian Harris. That's probably why he's a little bit up here. Would not be surprised if they draft another running back. Like that's just what they do. But how Kenneth Walker looked to end the season, how Tony Pollard looked to end the season, I feel like you kind of want to go running back here. You have your all-star in Justin Jefferson. We didn't quite get, another guy. Uh, if I can go, Jefferson and then, you know, maybe, okay, I'll actually say this
Okay.
because I'm talking on the fly here, but this is a little bit gamemanship of the draft. If you love Pollard and Walker, like if you're happy with either of them, which are the next two guys, and they're like on the same tier, do you go receiver here, knowing the team in front of you already has a running back, and they still could go running back, but most likely they're going at least running back, wide receiver, and you're going to get one of those two guys. Made
That's
you think.
true. You did maybe think. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was already debating if you go wide receiver here anyway. Because yeah, the odds of team one going McCaffrey, Ken Walker, Tony Pollard, 1, 2, 3 is very low. It'd be a very interesting draft strategy that if it worked out for you, props, but I don't think it will. Um, so who were you thinking at wide receiver? Because I do like the idea of going a wide receiver here, knowing that you're probably going to get one or the other between Pollard and Walker, and they are very hard for me to rank. I would probably say Pollard ahead of Walker because I think Pollard's ceiling is very high. Not that Walker's is not, but now seeing Pollard as a solid RB1, more carries than we've ever seen him have, I think is very exciting.
Yeah, so I agree, but I think, and you do have Travis Etienne sitting down there too, just in case they
Yeah.
were to go all three. So you have your in case of emergency break glass guy. Um, I think Garrett Wilson is interesting, especially under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback. Uh, you can talk about Devonta Smith. People him. You talked about him in the playoff challenge. He still finished as a top 12 wide receiver last year. So it'd be the first two players in the same position, but we did this with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins last year, so we're just doing it with the Eagles guys this year. I think is an interesting name. DK
T. Higgins
Metcalf.
himself too.
What's that?
DK Metcalf. T. Higgins himself too. I don't
Right.
think you said him yet.
Yeah, I didn't. T. Higgins himself. And then Keenan Allen. He's pretty low on boards, but you know, Mike, I'm not going to throw Mike Williams. I won't go through that whole debate again. Um, but if you could get, Jeff and because you have Jefferson, maybe you take the flyer on Garrett Wilson with the new quarterback because you saw the potential there. Have two elite guys.
Yeah. I'm on board going wide receiver. I don't know whose final say this is even. I'll give it to you, but I will say if great how you are as a fantasy player, if you want to play it safe, I think you go T. Higgins. If you are a gambler, you go Garrett Wilson. But I think in my mind they're kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, and I think so for me in that case too because I have Jefferson who's an all-star. It's not like um we have a guy that you're really worried about, or how we paired Cup with Stephon Diggs at the end of round one, beginning of round two, because Cup has the injury concern and the quarterback concern. We have Justin Jefferson. We expect him to be elite. I think I would go Garrett Wilson. I'd also throw Devonta Smith in there. Those two would be my next tier. I would actually, but let's go Garrett Wilson. Just have some fun with it. Which
Okay.
means we get the
I
last.
think I think that actually works better for team one also. We can kind of even just talk about like who the whole turn would be, even though not like formally, we're not going to do round 3. Like I think T Higgins or Devontae Smith, whoever you like better. I will probably say T Higgins in this case is your number 1 wide receiver then. And then you're taking your favorite out of the 2 running backs, which, like I said, I lean towards Tony Pollard, but Ken Walker's not a bad choice at all. You're getting a good 2 out of taking any of those 4 guys.
Right. And so to end it, I think we could even fill in 2 people here because it's the turn if we wanted to. But I think it would be Pollard Higgins would be the next 2.
I'm good with that. I think that's
Cool.
good. And then team 2 can
Sweet.
come back around and get Ken Walker, and they're also happy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then there's still some good names left. So I have not thought too much about fantasy, but I know this exercise has got a little bit juiced up for it. I hope it got you juiced up for it. Let us know why you would have taken Travis Kelce number 1. Like we said, if you want to, maybe just reach out to Tyler Snyder 88, I believe, on Twitter. That's so sad I don't know his name. If not, check the description below. All our tags are there. Wish him congratulations, because the next time you see him, he will be a married man. But I'm Cody Roadcap, joined as always with George Kerth, and thanks for checking out another episode of the Couch GMs podcast.
Boom.
Nice. Choo choo.